One of the biggest reasons you probably hate Facebook, Twitter and other social networks is something you've probably never heard of before: context collapse.
It's a real thing. It has its own Wikipedia entry. And they don't just let anyone have a Wikipedia entry anymore. Believe me, my entry's been deleted 5 times now. It's defined as the flattening of multiple audiences into one context, and it's what's causing a lot of the issues in how we discuss things online. Let's talk about it.
Part 1. How does it work? According to digital marketing expert and yellow glasses model Seth Godin, there are 2 types of marketing: interrupt and permission.
Don't skip! Pre-roll ads on YouTube are a prime example of interrupt marketing because they, well, interrupt you consuming the content you wanted to watch. Permission marketing is the opposite. It's where someone has given you permission to talk to them, like following them on Twitter or joining their subreddit, link below.
So when you send a tweet out into the world, initially it hits people who are only following you, and they've given their consent to get that message. If one of them retweets it, which is kind of what you want to happen, that tweet is then introduced to a new audience and a new context. This sounds harmless, but it can be anything but. This audience doesn't know you or have any context of what you might have meant by the words you wrote. That means they can misinterpret it, engage in bad faith, or pretend to be outraged for the sake of looking good to others. This is why joke tweets are taken literally and question replies are seen as attacks on people. Look, I'm not saying that every bad taste joke is above questioning or every response isn't a reply guy, but I am saying that we are increasingly losing our ability to give our posts context as they go out to too many audiences. Part 2. Twitter's main character. Each day on Twitter there is one main character. Your goal is to never be it. Okay, Twitter? Who do we hate today? Twitter's main character is an unofficial daily occurrence in which large groups of different audiences on Twitter,
You know, right-wing trolls, academics, journalists, former presidents, that sort of thing,
decide to focus in on one person's usually interesting or problematic tweet. The entire phenomenon of Twitter's main character is a masterclass in context collapse. Think of it like the high school lunchroom gossiping session, only it's not limited to the 100 or so people you went to school with. It's millions of people and there's no teacher to stop the pile-on. Part 3. Context on social media. Being able to switch between contexts with little to no friction is part of what makes the Twitter experience feel spontaneous and exciting. It's how we get celebrities interacting with fans, but it's also how you get some of the worst bullying pile-on examples of cancel culture we've ever had. What you say isn't meaningful without context. If I say, "I love you too," am I responding to someone's loving outburst? Or am I requesting the Joshua tree in a nightclub? Usually, offline context is obvious, but online it becomes a little harder to plan for because we don't get to pick the context our posts or content appears in on social media sites. But advertisers do. In fact, when brands like soap appeared before beheading videos, they complained to Google and got compensation for getting it wrong. There's not enough soap in the world to make me feel clean after watching a beheading video. Part of the terms of using any social media platform means that you have no idea or say what context anything you post will be presented to someone else in. Whatever you say will be given new context based on algorithms, crowds, and bad actors. You change what you're saying in real life based on the audience in front of you, but that's impossible to do on social media. People often argue that social media has given everyone a voice, and it has, but it hasn't given us a reliable context to use it with. The context is always added after you've spoken, and it's usually for someone else's profit. And because we never read these, we have no legal right to complain. When context is surrendered to a platform, communication and culture become pretty shallow and predictable. Your name is even gone on social media up to a point. You're a number, your followers, your clicks, your posts, your engagement, not unlike a dystopian sci-fi fiction, or in prisons. To become a number is to become explicitly subservient to a system. This becomes clearer the more extreme the situation. Part 4. Trending topics. In an attempt to reduce misinformation spreading through its trending topics tab, Twitter changed its process and hired a curation team. Remember, they're a platform, not a publisher. This curation team's job was to write neutral-sounding descriptions under each trending topic, but it often doesn't help. On the 6th of April 2021, English freelance journalist Ellie Hunt was in a pub in New Zealand when she tweeted this poll. She got one reply from a fellow writer which she responded to. She then put her phone away and thought nothing more about it. Overnight, her tweet had been retweeted 1,500 times by celebrities and bored trolls. The first few expressed fake outrage at the opinion, but it quickly snowballed. She woke up to angry emails from strangers and messages of concern from friends and family. She was trending. The context had gone from her modest following to a much wider audience to the trending topics tab itself. Now, Although the Trendings tab is designed to let anyone join in on a conversation, Twitter seems to have forgotten that too many chefs in any kitchen will only make a turd sandwich. In Hunt's case, she wasn't just highlighted in one trending topic, but multiple, showing just how broken this feature can become. Was there no other news that day? One of the worst possible experiences on Twitter is paradoxically the one that most people want to happen. You should really be careful what you wish for. Hunt had become the hunted and felt this during her run as Twitter's main character.
One of the options available to me would have been to lock my account to make it stop, which would have been seen as some kind of concession that I couldn't take the heat. So I decided to post through it, and it looks like I'm somewhat pathetically trying to keep my head above water. I didn't know what I could do to fight it out with dignity. It's just a failure of the platform.
Look, I know there are a lot of worse examples of Twitter harassment that have ruined people's lives on Google, most of which, if I included in this video, would get it demonetized. But this is not an example of that. This is an example of how broken social dynamics are on Twitter. It dehumanizes us, it polarizes us, and it only works to make us sad, whiny little bitches. Part 5. No context news. Most people discover their news on social media. This means that news outlets need to play their game and publish whatever gets the most clicks. Most people think of this as a Facebook issue, but actually it predates Zuckerberg. Facebook recently said it's going to de-emphasize news in our feeds, and I'm sure this has nothing to do with the investigations into how their algorithm is negatively impacting society, or how it's pushing people further to the extreme left or right, and everything to do with the fact we want more updates from our aunt's Farmville account. The problem is we're used to getting our news for free, and I'm for that. I think we should get news for free. But somebody does have to pay for it. And given we're not willing to discover our news off social media by subscribing to each publication or paying them for it, we're kind of stuck in a rut. For now, newspapers will continue to copy each other, using whatever clicks get the most clicks, because they need millions of them to cover costs. This is why so much clickbait looks the same. Okay, let's for a minute pretend that BuzzFeed is news. It recently launched its Community Summers Writers Challenge and said that the more views your articles or quizzes get on their website, the more you'll get paid from their advertisers. As you can see here, I'd get £1 per 1,000 views after the first 150,000 hits. At £1 CPM, you'd need to read 1,000 articles on BuzzFeed for them to get £1. And that's only if every view is monetized, which it rarely is. You don't read 1,000 articles in a month, let alone a day. But if we all subscribe for £5 a month, they'd earn more money for less views and could focus on actually telling us what's going on and not what will trick 1,000 eyeballs to go to their website. Also, while I've got you, if you wanted to join my Patreon so that I can avoid making clickbait videos and having to chase trends and instead bring you quality content like this, the link's below. I guess news outlets, like most of us, have to make a choice between reaching a small number of people with something meaningful versus a large number of people with nothing of value. On the plus side, it's nice to see that local journalism isn't succeeding on social media. This isn't because their writing is rubbish, but because they've got integrity and they're holding themselves to a higher standard than most social media influencers. Or at least that's what I tell myself when a video of mine only gets 200 views. Part 6. Podcasts. Podcasts are the last form of content not to lose their context. The shows are episodic, by real people to real listeners who have built up a sense of personality and context around the show. The listener's experience is as close as possible to the one imagined by the creator. Currently, you can't tell a podcast app that you love Jurassic Park and be served 100 different clips from 1,000 different shows and have those results adapt based on how long you listen to each clip. Thank God! But we do it every single day on YouTube. Part 7. How do I deal with context collapse? It's hard, but there are a few things you can do that would help with context collapse in your little corner of the internet. Option 1. Creating lists of people to talk to. Not every social media site offers these features, but some do, and we should be using them more. This is why I'm embarrassed to say that I thought Google Plus would have done better than it did. Google Plus let users add people to their circles, and for every post you put out, you would need to select which circles you wanted the ability to read it, giving you greater control over your context. Facebook has friend lists which make it easier, although by no means easy, to create feeds of friends that you want to talk to. On Twitter, you need to make an account for each of your interests or areas of your life, which sucks, but it would mean that people who found your writer account would interpret your tweets differently, even if they were the same words, to if they landed on your Harry Potter fan fiction account. Option 2. Self-censorship.
I'm bored.
Basically, you post things that are agreeable to most people. You have no opinions because anything will offend someone at some point. You could also be vague enough that people can interpret the message however they like. For example, you could post, "Thanks for all the support. You know who you are," which feels super personal to everyone, as long as they don't take a second to think about it or read into it too much. But by this point, they're probably smugly scrolling somewhere else on the internet, so it doesn't really matter anyway. Option 3. We could all engage in good faith. We could all start to engage from a place of good faith, on the assumption that, for example, if someone has comedian in their bio, they are joking in all their tweets, unless they explicitly say they're not, and therefore not pile on them because you either didn't get the joke or find it funny.
I don't wanna do that.